Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we're back at the cinema again. And as previously mentioned, Cineworld is showing a lot of Christopher Nolan films.
Yes.
To get the audiences back in and in anticipation of Tenet. So this week we're seeing the other two Dark Knight films. We saw Batman Begins the other day. But today we saw Interstellar.
And importantly, we saw it back at Cineworld, which is our usual haunt, and which wasn't open on Friday, so...
Cineworld Broad Street, that is.
Yeah, Cineworld Broad Street. So it's our first time back at Cineworld Broad Street.
Back at home.
Yes, and it was very nice to be back, actually.
It was, and back in the IMAX Digital. This is a film that was shot on IMAX.
Yes, it was shot on film, wasn't it? Because
Yeah, IMAX film, 70mm film.
Because I remember seeing it at Millennium Point.
We saw it together.
Yeah.
But it wasn't shown on IMAX there because that used to be an IMAX screen. And then I think they lost a license or didn't renew it, something like that. So what it became was the big screen at Birmingham Think Tank. So we saw it on just 70mm.
Yes.
Not in the full IMAX aspect ratio. I remember it very vividly because I really loved this film the first time round.
Yes.
In 2014.
Yes.
And it made me cry at the end. I loved how earnest it was. And I wrote a review of it on my blog and I was very glowing about it and all that sort of thing.
I was a bit cold about it, wasn't
it? Yeah, you said you didn't like it.
Yeah.
So what, how's that changed for you watching it today?
No. I mean, I'm not even sure if I admire it, really. I thought there's something kind of distancing about the film. Mm-hmm. I think it's also kind of pretentious, right?
It makes lofty comparisons with 2001: Space Odyssey. Quite deliberate comparisons, and 2001 is held up as a great masterpiece of the cinema and a real innovator, and it changed people's lives. And it's no accident that there's the organ sound that keeps coming back here. There's a shot of Cooper late on in the film where he's been kind of reborn after the black hole, which evokes the space baby. I don't think it's an accident that these things are in there. And I mean, what's the point of it? Is it saying? Well, I suppose it's trying to say that some of the themes are the same, and it's recognising an influence of 2001. But it does come across to me as sort of like claiming a throne almost.
Yeah. I mean, there were something, from minor things to major things that bothered me. Yeah. So you kind of applaud the film's ambition in a way, but actually, I just don't think it's very well realized. And I thought so. Some of the things that I didn't like, for example, I thought Anne Hathaway had some terrible moments. Yeah. She really wasn't very good. I thought in terms of character development, I didn't understand the brother at all, right? So you have him as Timothée Chalamet, and he's lovely and, charming and so on. And then when he becomes...
Casey
Affleck, there's all this anger and, I don't understand why he wants to keep his family to die in the farm. I mean, you're told his grandfather's nearby, but so what?
Yeah, he kind of gives up on his dad, which you see... so let's say what the plot is, just briefly, before we get into it, because there might be people who have not seen this film.
Yes, they might.
So Interstellar is about a dying planet Earth. Crops are failing. It's set in the sort of 21st century dystopian future, essentially, but there's like a new dust bowl. Yeah. I mean, literally, there are dust storms that coat everything in dust, and the planet is dying. And Matthew McConaughey is a former aircraft pilot, like fighter pilot or test pilot kind of thing.
Yeah.
Who's now become a farmer. He's had to.
Yes.
But he's still interested in that life. He chases down a spy drone right at the start. And then a quote-unquote ghost appears in his daughter's room, which seems to be communicating via Morse code. And the Morse code communicates coordinates. And they follow the coordinates and they find the last remnants of NASA, run by Michael Caine, whose daughter is Anne Hathaway. And they have this plan to get us off Earth, to find other planets. And what they're interested in is a wormhole near Saturn that can take you to another galaxy. And through this galaxy, they've already sent several pilots
Yeah,
looking...
12 or 13 or something.
Yeah, 12, I think, same number as disciples, I think.
Okay, so in that case it would be 12, wouldn't it?
I think it was, yeah. And looking for a habitable place to live. And Cooper, which is Matthew McConaughey, becomes one of these. And what follows is a long mission. It involves playing with time, relativity. It's a very scientifically literate film. But at the core of it is this little girl who thinks, well, she loves her dad, and she grows to think her dad's abandoned her.
Yes.
And there's this love at a distance thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, you know...
I know what you mean. I liked it less this time than the first time.
I mean, I just don't think... So, I don't know about the science, right? So, you were saying it's very literate scientifically. I'm sure that's true. But actually, I don't know about it because I am not very scientifically literate. And I must also say that I didn't feel I learned very much from the film Scientific Literacy. Yeah. It might be very scientifically literate, but it didn't communicate those things very well. And certainly it didn't make them dramatic or exciting. It didn't use them as part of the information that you know.
That's not quite true. It does make it dramatic. I mean, you may not have felt it did, but like, for instance, there's this thing about when you're in the presence of a very strong gravitational field, gravitational object, like the black hole at the centre of this galaxy, time slows down for you. And so when they go down to the water planet, they say we can only spend so long here because an hour down here is 7 years. And that's made dramatic because time is a resource, and they spend too long there. They come back and they spend 23 years.
Excuse-moi, that's the kind of science you see in every comic book. I mean, those
not exactly, but the point is it's based on it's building drama and tension out of genuine scientific principles.
Well, but what I'm telling you is that they might be very genuine scientific principles.
Yeah.
But I didn't build tension or drama for me.
You didn't feel that when they come back having spent 23 years, that, oh my god, things are... Or actually, not that when they get stuck there, because Brand spends too long trying to get the data thing, and they get stuck in the wave, you didn't feel like, oh fuck, they fucked it up.
No, what I felt is, they better move soon because the wave is coming, yeah? So it's kind of, that aspect kind of was much more...
So the physical danger of the wave is what generates attention for you, rather than the mission jeopardy of losing time.
Yes.
Right.
Well, there were several things there. There was the wave, and then there was the fact that they lost a colleague, which I think was not given the emotional resonance, that it should have been given.
Yeah, right? I agree. Same with the other colleague that they lose later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought there were kind of, there were moments of cheap sentimentality that got in the way of, a kind of a more complex and human understanding of people. Right. And I thought it was kind of lachrymose in some ways, really. I mean, I thought Ellen Burstyn's death scene at the end, surrounded by family. The film is very sentimental about family.
Yeah.
It's overly sentimental. I was watching a Youssef Chahine film, which is based on the biblical story of Joseph, which intersects with the Quran. And, kind of Joseph gets distracted a little bit. The wolves come after his sheep. His brothers get, so pissed off at him that they whip him against his father's wishes. Then the father, to protect the son, sends him off to Egypt. The brothers, instead of giving them their share of the money, kind of they sell him into slavery, right? So families come in many forms and varieties, and some of them are very loving and close, and some of them are not, and some of them kill their children, right? And some of them start off as loving and close and end up, not so. So, this idea that, that is like, that is the love in the film, actually, because every other type of love that you see is kind of betrayed, isn't it?
Yes, well, there's Brand's love for her ex or former boyfriend or whatever, who has gone on to one of the planets. Yeah. And she argues to go to that planet. And she argues in one of the very, very earnest scenes of the film, and not one of its best, that love, like gravity, can transcend dimensions, and the love that she feels for this guy is pulling her towards the planet, and maybe that means maybe we should take that as seriously scientifically as gravity. And it's nuts, and it's hard to watch it with a straight face.
Yes, though mind you,
but as you point out, it's betrayed.
Yes.
McConaughey chooses to go to the other planet because he thinks actually that love is dangerous, that her love for this guy is endangering them by pulling him there.
Yes.
And she's pulling there for the wrong reasons.
Ah, yes. Though mind you, I thought that the guy that she was in love with was the Matt Damon character, but...
Right. Well, that's just wrong.
Yes, okay,
I mean...
I thought they were very cool with each other.
And of course, it turns out that the planet that her ex is on is the right planet to go to, which you see right at the very end. She's setting up a camp there. She doesn't need a helmet to breathe. It's the right place to go.
Yeah.
She was right. So kind of the love is betrayed by McConaughey in choosing not to go there and choosing not to trust it. But it's the right thing overall. Like, the film has this belief in love, ultimately. Things do pay off through love.
It does. And that's one of the things that I liked about the film, except, you can convey that and convey it as much more complex. It's a very simple-minded idea of love.
It is.
Right? I mean, kind of love is also overcoming and, and accepting betrayal, or, kind of, it could be many things. It's not just, kind of, because some blood links you, you're then linked forever and have these, strong feelings, which, is really much what the film seems to be saying and evoking. So those things didn't sit very well. I remembered the film looking better than I
sort of know what you mean.
This time, I thought a lot of the special effects, which some of them look like 1960s psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, I think, again, quite deliberately. I mean, that's...
Okay.
Again, I think that's evoking 2001.
Yes, well, they already look dated,
Do you reckon?
I do, yeah.
I really like it.
I thought...
What do you think? Are you thinking specifically of when they go through the wormhole and it gets all sort of stretched? Which is directly, I think, again...
I was thinking of those reflections on Matthew McConaughey's face that look like tie-dyed greys and stuff. I thought, this is cheap. And unimaginative. But actually, I thought many things like that. I thought, the farm, it just wasn't filmed interestingly enough. There were all those shots where the car is moving, away from the farm, and the truck is taking up like 3/4 of the space in the frame, and you're thinking, why? Right? Like, so, on the one hand, I suppose you get the sense of movement, to me, it just kind of didn't look right. And actually, even all of those space shots, I never thought for a moment, oh, wow,
Yes, I know what you mean. I think the first time round I did. When you see the shots of Gargantua, in particular, the black hole, with the ring of light and it's stretching above. I mean, that was incredible the first time round. And this time it didn't inspire that same sense of wonder. But I think a lot of it is that this is a thing I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
And actually, I was thinking a lot of the reason that I loved it so much the first time was because I didn't know what was coming next, and it was showing me things that I hadn't seen. The giant wave that approaches you, there is one shot in particular, and it's a well framed and well composed shot. There's a camera move up the wave, and it's this impossible scale of the thing.
Yes. No, that's true. I like that.
So there are moments, but a lot of it is that I hadn't seen it, and watching it back, I didn't have that same sense of surprise and wonder. So less of it, I think, was effective on me.
One of the things that really grated with me, and that I don't remember, though, possibly, was the use of the Dylan... Is it Dylan Thomas?
Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night.
Yes, rage against the dying of the light. I thought, all right, kind of, so he's read Dylan Thomas. But this gets repeated like 6 times or something. It's ridiculous.
They do it a few times. But I do think... I mean, I noticed that I remember that from the first time I watched it, and this time I noticed there's one. He obviously says it all the time, like way more than he does in the film. Because there's one time when when Brand, the Anne Hathaway character, is watching a video message from him, and he finishes it off by by reciting the poem, and she does this look with her eyes to the side, which is, it half reads as, "Oh God, this again."
Yes.
And then the Matt Damon character mocks it, I think, doesn't he, later on?
Well, he says it. I don't remember quite if he mocks it.
Okay.
But then it also appears in the billboard of the new...
Yes.
Yeah.
The new space station.
Oh, come on, really, It kind of cheapens. I mean, I love that Dylan Thomas poem very much, and I remember when I first read it, it did have that effect with me, but here it becomes like a cheap trope, actually, I think.
Yeah, it kind of forces it upon you.
Yeah, over and over and over and over again, in a way that also kills the poetry. It's not as if it's illuminating the poetry or bringing it in a new light or something. It's just used as a cheap device. I didn't like that.
I think that can be said of so much of the film, that I think the music as well. And I'm not even referring to the organ that I've mentioned, but just you talked about the film having a cheap sentimentality, and I think the music is absolutely part of that. It's as manipulative as anything you might get to hear, and it's so loud that there are times in the film where I love the volume, like the volume of the kind of rumbling when McConaughey goes into the black hole. I think is fantastic, and I love the fact they don't really skimp. Like, this is a big moment, but with the music, it is screaming feelings at you that the film actually isn't really earning with the visuals and with the story. When he's in the Tesseract bookcase situation, and he's realizing that it's him and he has to send his messages, take away the music and it's not that powerful. It's actually kind of dumb. Dan Harmon, who wrote Community and writes Rick and Morty, had this thing on his podcast taking the piss out of it, saying like, it's like you have this thing of a guy runs past you when you're a kid going, and then you go, what was that? And then 35 years later you realise, oh my God, it's me. Like, that's kind of what the film is. That's what the twist is.
Yeah, I did like the way that dimension of time, I suppose, was visualized, because how do you visualize something like that? So I kind of like that, actually. But what I didn't like was maybe I didn't get something, or maybe I missed something, but I thought the film cheated. Yeah, in the sense that from that moment that he's going into like the black hole, and the whole ship is disintegrating, and then the computers go down, and his mask disintegrates or something, and then you see him. He just somehow lands in his daughter's room. I mean, how do you go from one place to the other, right? Like,
when I say the film is scientifically illiterate, this is somewhere where you can't defend that, because once you go into, no one knows what happens inside a black hole. We have our ideas, but you can't, because nothing comes out. You can't tell. So, as far as the film's concerned, once you go inside a black hole, you can do anything you like, as indeed they do.
They did,
and so you can say, oh, this they keep referring to is actually us from a future evolution where we've evolved into the fifth dimension, and we can do this. And you go, fine, I just go with it, like it's fine, whatever.
Well,
it is, but no, I'm agreeing with you. It's cheap and it's made up on the spot, and you go, fine, I guess.
It's what in normal literature you'd call a Deus Ex Machina or something.
Deus Ex Machina.
Because like you just bring anything you want and tie it all up together, but kind of you want something more than that, right? And especially like a film that's been as highly praised as this one, to me that's a very cheap kind of device, and I just didn't. Yeah,
I entirely agree. I was a lot less impressed. I mean, I the first time I saw it, I was swept up in the emotion. I remember very vividly going with it and going, "Oh God, this is great! This is great!" And the second time you see it, or even just thinking about it on reflection in the time since, you go, "No, that's not that good. It's actually not very. It's not a very intelligent or creative story. It's not very good storytelling." And it's great that it swept me up the first time, but it doesn't last.
No.
Today's experience shows that to me. It didn't feel the same. It didn't feel as good.
I mean, there are many things that just really didn't make sense to me emotionally, right? So, for example, why is the daughter so angry, right? Like, you know, she must have dozens of friends whose parents are divorced or whose parents have left or, you know, I mean, yeah. So her father going on this heroic mission, you know, which might take him years to come back. I mean, I'm sure it's a disappointment. And, you know, she'd miss her dad. But that, yeah, it seemed like such an over-response, you know, to something like that. And it's all defined, it's all shown to you as anger towards the father rather than sadness or, you know, like kind of, there are many complicated responses to something like that. So I thought that was kind of, you know, again, overblown and not, you know, not demonstrating a good understanding, right? And also this idea that somehow that anger lasts like 27 years or something. I mean...
Her anger is given new context when she thinks or realises that that Michael Caine's character has lied to her. That the plan was never to bring them back. That this was a suicide mission. So the anger is given a new context there that makes sense. And it's kind of redirected. But I agree to some degree with, you know, when she's a little girl and he leaves.
Yes.
She holds on to this resentment for a very long time, and you
27 years.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. And whereas I think with the son, it's much more legible. Actually, you see it in those videos that McConaughey watches when he gets back on the ship, and there's this 23 years of messages backed up, and you see it in Timothy Chalamet moving into Casey Affleck's performances and lines where it's, you know, I love you, Dad, and I don't think he says I love you, Dad, but he's showing off like my results at school. I've got this girlfriend, and then it becomes, I don't know why I'm sending these videos to you. It's obviously never coming back. Yeah. It makes a lot of, you know, and it's done in, you know, 30 seconds, a minute. It makes sense there.
That aspect does.
Yeah.
Him wanting to keep his family where he knows they're going to die, that didn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah.
So I think there were just...
You could read something into it. You could read in like, that's the only thing he has left. That's where he doesn't. That's the only place that he doesn't feel abandoned. That sort of thing. But you're reading into it to get that.
Yes. I certainly, you know, kind of didn't. I mean, you did. I wasn't given enough information to make readings really, because you think, after all, you know, you imagine he loves his wife. He must love his child. Why doesn't he try something? I mean, why stay where he knows it'll be death for sure? The doctor's telling them they must leave now. Yeah. I just didn't, you know, to me that was an inhuman response that I don't understand.
Mind you, I mean, if you look at the way people are behaving in times of coronavirus, there are people like that. I mean, there's this thing, you know, people say, and you said plenty of times, that Steven Spielberg has a bad understanding of human sort of psychology and or human behaviour and humanity. But you look at Jaws and you look at the people returning to the beach knowing that a shark is out there and will kill them. It's like, that's basically how people are responding to COVID-19.
Well,
so maybe he understands people very, very well.
I don't think so.
You know, and maybe Christopher Nolan does too.
I was interested, you know, because to me, all of those things... So, for example, I love almost everyone in this cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very impressive cast.
Yeah. I love Matt Damon. And actually, I normally love Anne Hathaway, you know, and Matthew McConaughey and so on. And actually, I think most of them are really actors that really do draw you in. They're warm actors, yeah? You know, so the other day we were talking about Michael Caine, and I always find there's something kind of cool, you know, proficient but cool about him, right? Whereas, you know, kind of Anne Hathaway and Matt Damon, it's like you're inside their heads, really, for better or worse. But, you know, kind of, they're very warm actors. So I'm thinking of Anne Hathaway in that.
You don't want to be in her head?
Well, you know.
Seems like it's a very earnest place to be.
Yes.
She's trying her best, always.
Yes, it's a very earnest, very actressy place to be.
Yes, it is.
Like, yeah. But actually I think they're not, and Jessica Chastain, I love her. You know, and I mean, I was thinking how gobsmackingly beautiful she is, actually. You know, and she's such a great actress. So, but aside from her, actually, because I do think that she brings something, you know, very human and energetic and legible and, you know, But everybody else, it's almost like the filmmakers haven't given them enough to convey the natural warmth that the actors have to the audience, right? So I thought Matt Damon was entertaining, and he's, a kind of a caricature of, I don't know, a Trumpian media figure or something. Yes.
Maybe.
Well, kind of masquerading heroism as, the shallowest cowardice and self-interest, and lying to himself constantly about it, really. So, that was kind of like a fun performance. But it also feels like kind of mechanical and unshaped and not, not fully real. And it makes it kind of, like a caricature, a sketch. There's nothing, one of the things that I suppose is a question because, and you think sometimes, well, maybe these are just my limitations. But, this is a film that, people loved and they went to great lengths and they had so many interpretations and, it led to people thinking, which I always think was a very good thing, right? But I don't understand why.
Did it?
Well, I'm assuming here, but yes, I mean, like people like you, when you first saw it, you went and wrote your blog and, it's not every film you feel like doing that about.
That's true. I wrote the blog more back then because we hadn't done the podcast. But I haven't read the blog back. I don't remember an awful lot of what I wrote, but I know that I responded to the scale and the scope and the fact that, like I say, it seems to be presenting things that I hadn't seen. That what excited me so much was not knowing where the story would go. Which you could say maybe I should predict where the story would go, but I was so in it.
Yes.
And not having that to respond to today, knowing like vaguely where scenes would go or remembering individual parts. It sounds arrogant to say, but it's like I saw through that.
No.
And I was kind of left going, wow, this isn't as good as I remembered. I can still see what I responded to, and I still teared up a couple of points.
Yes, I did as well. Though, I mean, that it's almost my definition of a cheap filmmaker, right? I always tell this story. You want to make an audience cry? Show a child. Show a bus. Running towards it. It's very easy to make an audience cry in a cheap way.
But I don't think it did. I mean, and maybe there are points where cheaper audiences would have cried more than I did. So maybe there are those moments. But I felt like the moments I responded to weren't that. The moments I responded to were when Matthew McConaughey sees the 23 years worth of footage of his son and daughter.
Yes.
And when he reconnects with his daughter right at the very end when she's very, very old.
Yes.
Those, maybe they were manipulative.
I thought the one with the daughter that was one of my least favorite scenes in the whole film. So I think that is cheap.
But it did feel honest. They felt honestly earned to me. Like I felt that I was giving it. I felt like I wasn't having tears stolen from me.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm reading it from a particular point of view, but I really hated that.
Yeah,
I did. I thought it was manipulative. It was filmed in a very manipulative way. So, at the moment of her death, her family closes in around her, and all you see is her surrounded by love. So
it's not exactly the moment of her death, but they're just talking about her dying soon.
Well, the way that it's shown,
it has a feeling of
And then so there's a way of reading that, and you think, the film is kind of really. So on the one hand, it's trying to make the Jessica Chastain character the heroine of the film. She's the one that resolves all the problems. So, which I think is also dishonest, because really, it's Matthew McConaughey's film, right? But there's kind of this gesture towards, feminism by saying it's really Jessica Chastain who deserves all the credit. But then the film weighs everything, and really the success of her life and the Matthew McConaughey's character's pride in her is all these ancestors that she's now, it's her children and grandchildren. You know, it's not that, she is, the most essential scientist in the whole history of mankind.
Yeah. Well, there's an element of that, the thing about Cooper Station is named after her, and the doctor who is there when Cooper wakes up says, we weren't going to bring her here because she's too frail, but she is Murph Cooper.
That's what I mean about the film having it both ways, because, it tells you that, but actually what it shows you and what it dramatizes is this enveloped in tons of children and grandchildren. I don't have any particular problem with that. I like family, so it's not, but it just...
even the house that they've I guess moved to the station or rebuilt, and it's there and it's the museum, it's Cooper's house rather than Murph's, really. That seems to be the kind of implication, I guess, or at least that's how it's presented when we see it. This is the place where the great hero Cooper came from.
Yes,
and less so Murph. It feels like.
Yes.
Although we only see it briefly, but
anyway, I don't want to make too much of it because I am also sensitive to moments like that, and they did act on me. But I just also feel that it's cheap. That kind of a more imaginative director would have done it in a different way. And I also didn't like the way that it was filmed. I thought Ellen Burstyn was amazing. It's like you really see kind of her emotions conveyed very clearly and kind of quiveringly, and
that's all I love. That and Matthew McConaughey, and he's crying like he does in the other bit that I cried at, and his emotions are completely on display, and he kisses her hand, and he's right there, and he's like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yes.
And
yes,
he's very good at being overcome.
Yes.
Which speaks to me. It's that thing that I think we've talked about before. Michael Caine says, women will cry and men will do anything but cry, and they hold the tears back, but that makes it so powerful when they do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I thought
you're not really going with me on that, but
well, because I think he overdid it. I think he and the director both overdid it. Matthew McConaughey cries and cries and cries and cries in the film, so he's actually proving the opposite of what you're saying, because there's no holding it in, right? It's all like floods,
I don't know. It's
55 different types of tears.
Yeah, maybe. But he cries with happiness. In that shot of him watching the video of his son, and you don't see his son at first. You see him watching it, and it's quite an extended take, and he starts off, just seeing it and smiling, and then he starts crying with happiness, and then it turns into sadness, and the way he moves through the emotions is wonderful.
Yes.
I really love that shot. That really got me the first time. It got me just as much this time.
Yes.
But I know what you mean. It's not a film of subtlety in any way. And maybe it can be... maybe it's true of Christopher Nolan that he's not really a director of subtlety, but he's been more subtle than this. This is a film that tells you in plain English, love is special and love is transcendent, and love... this is when I was talking about that. I really respect its scientific literacy, and there is a lot of it. There's thing, like when you're out in space, you never hear any diegetic sound because there is no sound in space, and it's actually quite effective and it makes sense. The way that kind of visuals look in space, the black hole makes sense. The whole thing about time being affected by gravity makes sense, and it's all there and it's used effectively. But there are real negatives to the scientific literacy, one of which is some things are very silly, like when Anne Hathaway's talking about love, and she's saying this thing, love it can transcend dimensions and it's physical force, and you're going, oh man, I get the earnestness, I get how much you want me to feel this, but I just don't. It's so silly. And then there are other times when it kills dramatic moments. So when they're on Man's planet, Matt Damon's, and his sort of betrayal is being revealed, or his lie, and Professor Brand's lie is being revealed by the video on TARS. There's this thing about for ages and ages, Professor Brand was trying to figure out this gravity equation so they could save the planet, and it's revealed that he already had this and it didn't work, and it was just a lie to send people into space. The Plan B thing, that was the only plan, and it's a really dramatic twist, but it's spoiled by Matt Damon's character Man saying the equation didn't work because he couldn't reconcile quantum mechanics with relativity, something like that. And you go, oh, like they're so dedicated to bringing in the science in every aspect that line just kills the moment stone dead. You know?
Well, I thought it was even worse than that, because so all of the characters condemn the Michael Caine characters, the most atrocious lie that anybody in the history of humankind has told. I thought, I don't get it. I mean, I would lie like that. I mean, it seemed quite logical to me why he would lie, right? And actually the film explains it to you, because he's found no other solution, right? And this is a way to kind of enable people to act honestly in the continuation of the species rather than the individual, right? Because if you told the truth, then self-interest would come in, only the richest and most powerful. That makes complete sense to me. I don't think that makes, the Michael Caine character a bad person for having, used that strategy.
Yeah.
And, on the other hand, what Matt Damon does is shallow, selfish, self-interested, cowardly, right? And yet you're making an equivalence between those two things. And they're not... Yeah, it's almost like the film can't tell the difference between one and the other.
Yeah, well, it's all rendered through the family. Like that lie that Professor Brand tells to get this mission going, it's all rendered through the family. So it's not that he lied and that's bad for humanity or whatever, but it's that lie is going to keep Cooper from his daughter forever. They thought they could get back, that was the point, and they can't. And that's the reason that you're supposed to hate the lie.
Yeah, but the film can't distinguish between its own thinking or the point it might want to try to make and Matthew McConaughey's feelings for his daughter, because you could feel that way emotionally and nonetheless recognize that rationally it makes sense to do it that way, right? So again, it's a very self-interested, selfish, self-involved way of looking at the situation that you're somehow meant to identify with.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those things are very muddied in the film. I'm actually more than muddied. They're wrong-headed. Yeah. They're not thought through, I don't think.
Yeah. I want to think about the action a bit, because it really struck me that so much of the action really didn't work for me. And it's a film where the action is of a very high concept. There's a concept to everything. So when they're on the high gravity planet, the action is based on the giant wave, and it's based on the tension of the time as a resource. Matt Damon tries to dock his ship, and he screws it up, and he explodes the ship, and it starts spinning, so they have to spin at the same rate so they can dock, and that's a very arduous task. There's, I suppose, going through the wormhole, which is not kind of arduous in itself, but you just don't know what you're going to expect. And almost none of it really worked. Like, I could see how it was... I could see how the ideas were operating and what the idea was, but I wasn't feeling any of it enough. There was something missing in every action scene.
I thought the same thing, and about the same scenes, actually. And what was going on in my head was, or what I was thinking when watching it, is, you watch an old Errol Flynn film about aviators, and it's exciting, right? And yet, I don't know any more about aviation than I do about spacecraft, right? So why is the Errol Flynn stuff exciting? And actually, it's because I think the film tells you, what Errol Flynn needs to do, how difficult it is, and what he's got to do to achieve it or die, right? Whereas actually this film doesn't, right? So particularly at the beginning, it's like, don't open this, don't do that. Kind of, you see that the thing is not attached properly, but you don't know how much time he's got. Yeah, you don't know whether there's a possibility of him doing it properly or not doing it. It just doesn't make sense. Really.
Like, it makes some things very clear. It makes clear what they have to do to dock, but the stakes in that particular scene aren't really very clear. Like, if we don't manage to do this, what happens? Well,
Yes.
they don't even think about that. It's just, this is obviously going to happen because the film has to go on. Like, that's sort of the feeling. On the high gravity planet, I think actually more of that is taken care of. You know, you understand the stakes. This thing about we're going to lose so much time. Once once it's clear what the planet looks like and that there are these giant waves, that's very, very clear. But there is still something, I don't know, almost too quick about it. There's certainly something quick about the way they leave that planet. Like, the second wave comes along, and they've had this long chat in the middle, and then it's just, oh shit, the wave's here, gotta go. And they just do. Like, I would just like to spend a little bit more time getting off the planet and have a bit more tension as, are they going to? It just happens.
You look at the early Star Wars films, right? And cheesy as they are and so on, and, you know, nonetheless, those things are exciting in those films, and you feel really well situated, and kind of, you know what their powers are, what can be done, kind of, you know, if someone's hanging from a ledge, you see the steps to get out, you see that they might not be able to make it, like, kind of, all that information is conveyed to you. I feel here it isn't, you know, so you have things moving around quickly.
It's funny, there's an analogue of that, what I just was complaining about, leaving the high gravity planet. There's an analogue of that in one of the Star Wars films. Was it Episode 5 where Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon and Leia and that they go into a cave to get away from some TIE fighters that are following them, and they stay in there for a while, and then they realise that the ground's moving, and they realise it's a giant slug that they're in the middle of, and they don't even realise that, they just realise something's not right here, and so they escape as quickly as possible, and you see from their perspective these jaws closing, and they just get out, and then it's when they're out you see this long shot of the planet and then flying off and this bloody great big slug
okay, yes,
coming out. So and that's something where you're not given all the information. They're only all they've worked out is we need to get out of here, and it's only after they're safe that you see what the danger was. But that had more tension than leaving this high gravity planet where you know what the danger is. It should be easy to generate a bit more, but they don't spend long enough doing that. No.
Yes.
There's also a sequence that's intercut, 2 action scenes intercut, which is when they're on Man's planet, and he's leading McConaughey out to attack him and kill him. So he hopes, and that's intercut back on Earth with Murph driving out to the house to try and get the family to leave, and then she leaves, and then she comes back and she sets the crops on fire. Which, you know, it's not explained in dialogue, but I think it's quite obvious that, like, she's doing this to make sure they leave because they've got nothing left if they've got no crops. But I didn't like it, or I don't get it, because the enormity or the significance of these 2 actions is very, very different. Like, on the one hand, you got this guy being led out to his death, and he ends up having a physical battle for his life on this planet, and on the other hand, it's not even entirely clear really what her motivation is at certain times to do what she's doing. It doesn't have, like, there isn't an equal weight between these 2 things.
No.
Why they're intercut doesn't make sense.
It's my pet peeve about the brutishness of contemporary American culture, right? You know, where everything gets destroyed and nothing seems valued, and, you know, I thought in a planet in which food is so scarce that you only have 1 crop left, and in which there must be people starving, and actually you see them eat, and they're eating corn on the cob and, you know, corn pudding or whatever. To destroy the last crop that they're probably ever going to get from this land just shows such a lack of empathy and understanding, and you know, I mean, it's a world that's kind of, you know, going in starvation mode, and you kill the crop. I mean, you wouldn't arrange for the neighbor to collect it, or for it, you know, to be given to the homeless, or you know, or actually to harvest it and carry it all away, like.
Well, again, it's all rendered through the family. Like, what's important is the family, and she's saving her brother's family by making them move, and it doesn't have a wider view.
No.
Even though it kind of, you know, it wants to, like, the film opens on all these videos of people remembering the Dust Bowl.
Yes.
You know, the Dust Bowl as it is in this film, not the real Dust Bowl in the 1920s.
Yes.
So, you know, we had no food back then, we were running out of crops and such and such. And it's like, so the film opens on this idea that this is a worldwide thing. that everyone was suffering it. There's this social kind of decay, not decay, but social kind of panic to it. And then there's no more of that, basically. The rest of the time, we talk about humanity, we talk about saving the planet, but, you know, and Cooper talked about saving millions of families, not just his own. But the film doesn't feel any of that. The film is all about this family and these two people, in particular, the dad and daughter. That's how it makes sense of everything.
Yeah,
I didn't like how she realizes or works out that the dad is the ghost at the end. She actually has no reason to do that. It really snuck by me the first time, but I watched it this time and I think all she's done is assume like that they, quote unquote they keep referring to, are the dad now. But actually she's got no real reason to.
No.
And it happens in the middle of the start of the Tesseract scene. So it's all supposed to be coming together, and that he realises he's the one sending these messages, she realises it at the same time, and he starts sending the messages, and it all comes together and makes sense. But
and you understand why he realises, because he's seeing her.
She doesn't have a good
actually, you don't. Yeah, it's true. Actually, you don't. You know, she could. I mean, it would have made just as much sense for her to say, "Oh, it's like the goddess of Venus or something." You know, like
exactly.
sending me secret messages. I mean, there's no inherent reason why she thinks it's the father.
Yeah. Like the thing that said "stay," the message that says "stay." And it's like, oh yeah, that was the dad telling himself to stay, but she doesn't have a good reason to say that.
Yes, and also, actually, the film is illogical in that, because if he would have stayed, they'd all be dead. Yeah. So you know, even that doesn't make sense, really.
Yeah, it's like his emotion in the moment is, no, you should never have left your daughter, but you needed to.
But you know, he's meant to be in this time-space continuum where past, present, and future are one, and he can go into every room. So he should know enough that really, it was good for him to go.
That is quite elegant, though. I think you mentioned you like the design of that space, and I agree with you. And there's something that feels quite poetic about being behind the bookcase.
Yes.
There's something that's like communicating through knowledge.
Yes.
You know, which is.
Yes, I like that kind of aspect of it. Though I also did think, you know, when they go into the new world or something, you know, in science fiction in the 70s would have this thing of like the value of knowledge or rediscovering books, or sometimes it would have like, you know, Kal-El, right? Superman's father sends him the whole repository of the knowledge of his culture, right? Because those things are important. This film didn't do enough with that. Like, you know, kind of in the new world, you'd think that you'd be shown the library of the new world or something, right? So this will be my last one, really, because I feel I'm beating a dead horse. But the other thing that I found really disappointing was the battle sequence between Matt Damon and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
You know, because you feel they've designed it interestingly, that bleak rock landscape, but they don't do enough with it visually. Yeah, I mean, I would have liked the camera to move more, or to indicate feeling or excitement or emotion or grasping or struggling.
Yeah.
Actually done through the conjunction of the camera moving through that set design. It's almost like the set design itself is given most of the work to do for the
and the music again. I think the music's doing it. I think actually the visual, the camera placement and the shot selection and the editing is rudimentary.
Yes.
And I would like to have felt more kind of. Remember in Game of Thrones when Brienne of Tarth fights Sandor Clegane, the Hound.
Yes.
And it starts off as like a classic sword fight, you know, like just ching ching ching, and then before you know it, they're just smacking each other in the face, and it's brutal, and like one of these people is gonna fucking die. It's incredible, right? It's an amazing scene. Like it just descends into this brutality. It starts off as, you know, like what you would like, you know, your ideal fight, and it descends into what a fight really is, which is nasty and vicious. Nothing of that feeling here. I would have liked that kind of brutality.
Yes.
You know, nothing even close.
Or even more of a desperation to survive.
Yeah.
With a knowledge of the elements involved in the success or failure of that survival. I mean, I also feel that like him going after that orange thing is like, you know,
Oh, the communicator.
Yeah, well, you think like, why is he running after it? Is that what's going to save him? Like, because, I mean,
It does save him.
Well, I know, but initially, it's not oxygen, it's not something to fix, it's the air that he's losing, right? So, I
don't know, I think the film actually did enough to communicate that, because it does start off with, when Matt Damon's luring him out there, he says, do you have a long-range communicator, because you're going to need one. And then you see one or two close-ups of it on the back of his, on the side of his helmet, and it's like, it's sharply in focus. In a shallow focus shot, so I think you are cued into.
Okay, well maybe that's significant. I mean, what I remember about that scene is, are you fully charged up?
Yeah.
Rather than the do you have a long range communicator?
Yeah. Fair enough.
But, so I might be wrong about that, but I just didn't feel that.
Yeah.
It was exciting enough, or that it was visually exciting enough.
Definitely not visually exciting enough.
So
I have one final thing I'd like to think about, which is when we were talking about Batman Begins the other day, you were saying it's a very British Batman.
Yes.
And I want to think about how British or American this is, because very early on, this occurred to me as almost sarcastically American. Like, you've got this cornfield, it's like, it's like basically just like, Iowa or whatever, where they grow corn and whatnot, and it's this homestead, and there's a very classic American kind of feel to it. And then there's this thing about how in the future, no one believes that American landed on the moon, and the revised official textbooks, Cooper's told at his parent-teacher conference, the revised textbooks say it was faked so that the Soviet Union would spend loads of money and bankrupt themselves, and we never actually landed on the moon. And he's deeply offended. You think we didn't land on the moon? We're explorers. We do this, And they talk about quite a bit. They talk about we're explorers. We do this because we can, because that's who we are. And there is something. And Cooper is a former space test pilot. And now he's a farmer. And it's like there's something all American about him. And he's from Texas. What's more American than Texas? And
let me tell you where
that's how he's constructed. The last American. It's like he is.
Yeah, but it's also done in ignorance.
Well, yes, this is kind of where I was sort of. Carry on, because this is kind of it's such a caricature.
Well, it's not only a caricature, but there are basic faults that would be completely unacceptable if he were dealing with a British milieu, right? So here you have a family with John Lithgow, Matthew McConaughey, Jessica Chastain, Timothy Chalamet, and Casey Affleck, all speaking in different accents. One family. It's like, if you're making a British film and you cast a family, one has a Liverpool accent, and the other one has a Cockney accent, and another one has a Scottish accent, and
that's really true.
I mean, it would be completely unacceptable, really.
Yeah, that's really true. I thought about that.
So
yeah. Because I mean, are you even told the state that they live in?
Well, just assume
just
Texas
somewhere Midwestern.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like where everyone comes from.
Yeah. So for all we know, it's Oklahoma or something, right? But you assume it's kind of Texas only because of Matthew McConaughey's accent. But then you do realize that every single family member in that family speaks with a different accent.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
So,
and Michael Caine speaks in his London accent because he can't do another one. And they don't even bother. Like very often when you get someone who's so clearly from not the right place in a film, they'll have some line of dialogue that explains, oh, he's from England but he worked here. None of that. Nothing. It's you don't need it. It's Michael Caine.
Yeah,
fine.
Which is in a way that's fair enough.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well. But it did strike me because in fact, Matthew McConaughey is one of the few American stars of this period who's got a very localized accent. Yeah, I mean, he is Texas.
Yeah.
So it's very noticeable that all the others aren't, right? And you think at least his children would talk like him, right? Yeah. And in fact, actually, you'd think that he would talk like his father as well. I mean, this is how you learn your languages, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, it'd be from where he grew up, but there's nothing about, they moved or anything. It's as you say, you should be assuming really that this is just a family that is where it is. Otherwise, there would be things explaining it, and there isn't.
No.
They just all speak in different accents for no good reason.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a given that you don't expect movie stars to do accents, right? So, somebody like Ingrid Bergman or Marlene Dietrich with their accents, like you cast them in anything because they're movie stars. Fair enough. So, you could cast Matthew McConaughey in anything because he's a movie star. But at least you take care that the people around him would speak like him. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's the downside of casting movie stars in all the other roles.
Yeah.
Like, they have to speak like themselves too.
Well, but they weren't movie stars.
Well, not all of them.
No.
But no, yeah. John Lithgow, certainly. I mean, people know him.
Yeah, people know him, but John Lithgow's a very good actor, actually, and he would normally do accents.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's more just a lack of interest or care, or
I agree.
Or actually, this presumption that it just doesn't matter, right?
It's very good. It's very good that they found so many actors who look like other actors to play, older and younger versions. Especially Timothée Chalamet. I mean, Timothée Chalamet wasn't close to being a star at this point. I think this is quite an early role for him. I think this might even be before Homeland, where he wasn't that big either. And then he turns into Casey Affleck, and you go, oh yeah, they do kind of look alike.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Although Casey Affleck, the casting of Casey Affleck and Matt Damon stuck out for me. I noticed them when they showed up. They were them.
Yeah.
Whereas the others are characters.
I love them both, and I think they're very good actors. Though again, who has a more distinctive accent and voice, than Casey Affleck, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's got like a Boston accent, and
and there's a kind of scratchy timbre to his voice as well that Chalamet doesn't share.
Well, but I was thinking more in relation to Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking when Chalamet turns into Affleck, you're like, wow, really different voices.
Well, true, but maybe the voice cracks. That could be explainable in other ways. But to have a different accent. Yeah, it's kind of anyway. Yeah, I don't want to make.
Or maybe he just wanted to maybe he wanted to be like Matt Damon.
Or maybe just the director didn't notice, didn't care,
It's possible, but unlikely. I think there's hidden backstory. I just want quickly... Christopher Nolan's filmography, right? I think I've seen all but 2. Well, Tenet's yet to come out, but I haven't seen Following, and I haven't seen Insomnia. I've seen all the rest.
I've seen Insomnia. I haven't seen Following.
No, Following's very early, and apparently it's rubbish. But I'm interested to see it. But... having seen this again today, I would say it's my least favourite of his films, actually. I think there's lots of bits of interest that I like, but it really doesn't cohere. It's dumb, basically, actually.
I mean, for me, I would say that having now seen almost all of his films, they're all very ambitious, and I think none of them really live up to their ambition.
Even Dunkirk?
Even Dunkirk, which I think is the one that I responded to the most, though I also wonder now, was I responding to that fantastic IMAX? Or, was I responding to the film itself? Yeah.
If it comes around again in this strand or whatever that they're doing, bringing all these films back, I definitely want to see it again, because I've only seen it the once at the IMAX, as he said, and I was blown away by it and really affected by it.
And
I would like to see how well it's... no, we didn't. I went to Manchester to see it with Matt.
Oh, right.
You saw it in London, I think.
I saw it in London. I thought I'd seen it with you in London, though.
No. But I would like to see how well I respond to that now, how much I think it stands up, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, let's play it by ear, because, I mean, if they all keep being like this, I think there's only so much Nolan I'll be able to stand, Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be interesting to see Inception again, but that's only because I have seen it 20 times. Like, I don't need to see it again at the cinema, I don't think. I know how much I like Inception. But other ones I would be... I mean, we are seeing the other Dark Knights.
Yes.
The other... If you can imagine they might bring The Prestige back, but it's not a spectacle film. It's a...
I like The Prestige.
I love it, but I just don't imagine them bringing it back. It's not a get the punters in film.
Yeah.
But Dunkirk they might. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Because that's what the purpose of this is get the people back into the cinema and get them hyped for Tenet.
I wouldn't mind seeing Inception again.
Okay, well, I would see it again because I love it. I mean,
Well,
so
if they're showing it on IMAX or something, we should see it.
well, we did see a trailer for it before the film.
I know.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be there.
Right. All right. So let's do that. Anything else?
No, I'm really glad I saw it a second time. I'm glad I saw it on a nice big screen because it's obviously where it's meant to be seen, and it makes it, it means that you can't blame disliking so much of it on watching it on a laptop.
Yeah.
I saw it properly and came out with an honest opinion.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, my view is that it kind of confirms my initial impressions, which I thought, that maybe I had not viewed the film in the best conditions, because sometimes, you are too tired and, and so on, and a film might be, it might be too demanding, or you're not up for it at the moment, or, but actually, seeing it again, I don't feel that differently than on my initial viewing. And I do think it's a film that is very overrated.
Mm.
So on that note, you can send hate mail to us.
So, yeah.
We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are wrong.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. That's where you send the hate mail to. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
I never say that.
Yes, everyone else does.
I should.